Hi, I'm Nethi, and I wanted to talk about some of the negatives of therapy. I've been in therapy for over 7 years, and it's affected me so much. It's had such a positive effect on me that it's pushed me to pursue a career in psychology. I just finished my master's in psychology a couple of years ago, and after that, I've experienced supporting people going through mental health crisis for the past 5 years, and it's taught me a lot about how therapy works for certain kinds of people. When I started therapy, I only had my experience to go off from and the positives I'd experienced. And I recommended therapy to everyone that I knew. And I wanted everyone to experience the positives I've experienced. But since I got into crisis help and speaking to people that are going through mental health crisis that may not have access to therapeutic services or may really struggle to even get out the door, I've learned a lot about other people's experiences, and they're not always as positive as I thought they would be. And right now in the pop culture, of course, we have an increased acceptance of therapy and people are using terms more freely. People are talking about their mental health issues more freely. And this is a welcome change, especially after COVID, where we've struggled a lot with loneliness and depression and loss and grief. And so I don't want to dismiss any of the benefits any of you have experienced in therapy. But at the same time, there's lots of negatives. There's lots of fallbacks of therapy that aren't spoken about as often. And I thought I would just address some of them. One of the main ones is just access to therapy. Now, I got really lucky to have enough resources and support from my family to be able to afford therapy for myself for the past 7 years. But a lot of people might not have the finances to support or even justify that as an expense. A lot of times we have a family to take care of or not make ends meet with our expenses so much so that we can't afford an extra expense of therapy. And that can be really frustrating, especially when therapy could really help you with your financial issues as well. It's not only that, but therapy is not just a 1 or 2 session things. It's not a checkup appointment like you would go to a doctor with. It requires a lot of commitment. It requires 6 sessions, 7 sessions, a few months, a couple of months, even to experience any significant changes in how you feel. It took me over a year, actually, to start experiencing really significant benefits from therapy and a lot of work that went into it. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of commitment. And it's not just that. I matched with my therapist quite well, quite early. But finding the right kind of therapist is not just about the competencies of a therapist. It's not just about how well the therapist is trained. It's about your relationship with the therapist. It's how we connect with them, how we trust them. That therapeutic relationship is one of the biggest determinants of success in therapy. It's not competence. And finding the right match for you and for people can be quite tricky. I've had friends go through that experience and go through many therapists before they could find someone they really connected with, they really felt understood with. And so it's a long process. And through that process, you might just give up. It can be really frustrating, especially it's a really expensive process to go through as well, and really disheartening when you're struggling with your mental health. In some countries like UK, there's public funded access to therapy. I live in UK at the moment in Scotland, and you do get referred to NHS funded programs, but they're mostly CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, which taps with your mind, but it doesn't go through more of the deeper things. But that's a longer conversation to get into. That's not enough. 6 weeks of therapy, which you get referred to, is not enough to see a lot of meaningful changes. It may help you in the moment, but you may feel kind of left out after that. It might make you feel more alone and on your own, trying to find more consistent help. And even if you wanted to get through to the waiting list, you would need to have significant impairment in you to even qualify for NHS funded waiting list. And the waiting list is really long. NHS, National Health Services in Britain, is very understaffed at the moment, which means it's going to take a while. And your mental health might get a lot worse before you're able to get the kind of help you really need. And If it's not that, and if you've privileged enough to have private health insurance, you can't get access to those funds until you have a clear diagnosis. And that leads us to the diagnosis problem. Now, the diagnosis for any mental health issue or illness requires you to meet certain criteria. And you don't have to meet all the criteria for it to have a significant impact in your day-to-day life. However, if you don't meet the criteria for a diagnosis, you don't get one, which means it's not justified for your insurance to pay for therapy sessions. And that may affect your access even more so. And it's not even if you make it through all of these hurdles and you are able to access therapy and afford a significant amount of sessions and you find the right match for you and someone you can trust, a very competent therapist, there's still more challenges ahead. And one of the most important one is your own expectations. When I first started therapy, I thought going to a therapist meant they're going to validate all of my emotions and agree with me on everything. I had to go through a social event with my parents at some point, and I remember going into therapy thinking my therapist is going to agree with everything that I say to them. That did not happen. I would explain the situation more, of course. I was really angry about my parents wanting me to go to the social event. And I was really angry that they didn't understand why I did not want to go to that particular event and why it was making me anxious. And I decided not to go. And I was really angry with them for the next few days. I didn't speak to them, went into therapy thinking this is justified, they are in the wrong. And as I explored my feelings around the situation, I realized that I never communicated to them. I didn't feel understood by them, but I never told them why I did not want to go to that particular event and what my anxieties and fears were. And then after the session, when I told them, they were quite accepting of it. And so it was a really difficult process to go through. It was really challenging. And this is something I see a lot often in, family and friends that want to go to therapy is they feel that going to a therapist means they're going to validate everything that you have to say, that everything you say, they're going to have to agree with you. It's going to be a passive process where you just feel heard. It's a one-sided process where you don't feel challenged. And if those are your expectations, then going into therapy is going to be very disappointing. And if you're not open to that challenge, you might end up leaving therapy early on or resisting any kind of changes. And in that sense, therapy might not help you or work for you. Another one that I see quite often is putting a therapist on a pedestal. When I started talking to people about pursuing a career in psychology and some of my training, a lot of strangers around me started asking me advice on their life and asking me to make decisions for them. It was quite a different experience. It wasn't something I thought, or it wasn't something I was expecting from people. But this happens a lot within therapy as well, where people expect the therapist to have all the answers and for them to be the expert and for them to be a passive kind of passenger in therapy, and the therapist will do all the work and they're the expert and they're the ones who are proactive. But you would be wrong. Therapy only works as much as you would want it to. There's this joke I think a lot of people heard of, like how many people does it take to change a bulb? And a psychotherapist would say that it takes just one, only if the bulb wants to change. Okay, I'm going to cut that joke out of here. But if you aren't ready to invest significant amount in changing who you are and putting in the work as much as your therapist is, it's not going to be successful. It's your responsibility to make meaningful changes in your life and a therapist's responsibility to facilitate that change. It's not a therapist's responsibility to change your life. And if you go in there as a passive passenger, as someone who doesn't want to be proactive, at the end of the day, therapy is not going to work. And you could be in therapy for years and might not see any significant change in who you are as a person. Another expectation that we have might not be internal, it's external or to do with external circumstances. Let me explain. Um, Mental health problems don't come in a vacuum. Growing up in a dysfunctional family or environment or friends around you have a big, significant impact on who you are as a person. And making those changes in yourself threatens those relationships. It threatens the kind of safety you feel around you, your family relationship, your close friends. Say if you were a people pleaser, there would be people that might be benefiting from it or would have been for many years. And you standing up for yourself would challenge those relationships, would threaten those relationships. Sometimes when we go into therapy and work on ourselves, the idea of changing all of that and losing a lot of your friends can be really overwhelming and scary. And it may lead you to sabotaging therapy. It may lead you to not accepting the kind of help and making those changes, because what will happen to all the close people in your life, your parents, and all the relationships that you've held so close to you. The idea of feeling lonely and not having anyone also can be quite overwhelming. And that's one of the reasons sometimes therapy doesn't work for people. And sometimes it's not just us being scared of those changes. Sometimes it's people proactively trying to discourage therapy. In countries like India, where therapy is still a taboo, when I tried to change my career to psychology, I heard a lot of ideas around you'd become as crazy as the people you help, or that I could read minds, or maybe there must be something wrong with me in wanting to pursue a career in psychology. And these kind of beliefs around therapy and psychology can really keep you from getting help. You might understand that you need help and go to a therapist, but as you start doing that, the feelings of shame around therapy or needing help can keep you from making those meaningful changes and making that kind of commitment. The idea of feeling broken or feeling judged by people around you can really keep you from getting the kind of help you need. And these are the kind of and these are some of the reasons that therapy doesn't work. But sometimes there might be no internal, external reason or access. That's the problem. Sometimes therapy just isn't for you. And sometimes you need something more proactive, like coaching or help through somatic therapies or yoga and other things. Or you can pair them with therapy for it to work for you. Say if you struggle with public speaking and socializing and building relationships and struggling with social anxieties, sometimes coaching can help you work on your interpersonal skills, on being able to speak to public. And it requires action, and it requires someone to push you and hold you accountable. And if, say, you want to grow in your career and advance in your career, sometimes you need something more proactive like that. And for trauma, there's been a lot of research on yoga, somatic therapies, and mind body connection being of benefit to people. And sometimes moving through your body can actually help you with trauma more so than just talking about it. In fact, talking about trauma can sometimes also make it worse. And even if alternative therapies aren't for you, sometimes just engaging with community and doing social work and meeting people within your community for supporting other people can get you out of your own head and think about other people. And that can benefit you a lot, because it can help you find social relationships. It can help you build close relationships with people and engage with community and feel a sense of purpose and meaning in life, which can alleviate some of those symptoms. We live in the kind of world where people hide behind their phones a lot. And if you're watching me, you're probably one of those people. Social media has become an everyday part of our lives. But sometimes it's good to disconnect and find real in-person relationships. And we've really lost touch with that. And I see more and more of people feeling socially anxious and lonely and hiding in their rooms. And just engaging with communities for these things can help people so much more. But these are just some of my thoughts around negatives of therapy, and I'd love to know what some of you think about it. And I hope some of these points help you understand some of the negatives and some of the problems people struggle with. It's not just the idea of, hey, I need help, I need therapy, and people are going to just switch and change in the next few days. That's also barriers to therapy. There's lots of barriers to your own expectations and external expectations that may come in the way. And I hope we can have compassion for people that are struggling and understand that it's not that easy to make these changes. And thanks for listening to me.